Welcome back to Business Keeps on Dancing, and we're back with a brand new podcast. So this podcast series is going to be called Under the Spotlight, and really what we want to do is shine a light on the people who are traditionally behind the scenes putting together a lot of your favourite festivals and start to understand what their secrets to success have been. So today's guest, I'm super excited to introduce Jon Drape. So Jon's one of the most well-respected and known figures in the music and events industry, and the chances are, if you've been to a festival this summer, Jon's probably be behind one of them. So we're going to chat about everything from the Hacienda through to the inception of Warehouse Project, all the way through to him starting festivals such as Snowbombing and Festival Number 6. So lots to cover in this episode. It's a great conversation. We could have spoke for hours, so sit back and enjoy. Welcome back to Business Keeps on Dancing. This is our Spotlight series, and we're going to be interviewing some of the most successful people in the music and the events industry, finding out their journey, their secrets to success, and how they've done it. So we're joined by a real heavyweight today in Jon Drape. Jon's the founder of Engine Number 4, and that's the team responsible for the production of many of your favourite shows. You're probably all very familiar with them. Everything from Warehouse Project, Bluedot, Lost Village, Parklife, Kendal, Snowbombing, Escape to Freight Island, you name it, Jon's done it. But Jon really has been the driving force behind many of your favourite events and festivals. Jon has really seen it all, everything from the boom of the Hacienda. He's hosted seminal gigs with the likes of Oasis, started part of the team that started the revolutionary Warehouse Project, and he's really been a big part of the explosion of the festival scene in recent years. And Jon's really been a big part of innovating in the music and events industry for decades, and I can't wait to find out how you've achieved it all, because you've been a very, very busy guy. So yeah, Jon, I hope I've done you justice there.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. Yeah, very good.
So yeah, how's things with you? Thank you for coming in.
All good. Yeah, you know, we're coming through the pandemic in some reasonable shape. I'd say we've had a compressed festival season, which was extremely challenging. But quite satisfying. So we got away a couple of shows, Lost Village and Parklife, and now we're in the thick of the Warehouse Project season. Nice,
busy then, I imagine. So what I wanted to do, because I think you've been around for so many really seismic moments in the industry, but I wanted to go back to where it all started, where you kind of first dip your toe into the world of events and how you first got into it.
Well, I was obsessed growing up as a teenager. I was quite unusual. I was obsessed by theatre. I think it was from going to the theatre with my parents at quite a young age, and just that whole experience and sort of immersive experience of being in a theatre and being sort of transported away to this other world. I was really quite taken with it, and I spent most of my early teens helping out at a local theatre, and I was absolutely convinced my career and my future was in theatre, which was quite unusual for most teenagers. I knew what I wanted to do, you know, I was that obsessed with it. I ended up going to the Palace Theatre in Manchester and doing work experience there. Got a place at theatre school, but I left school at 15 and I couldn't get it funded, so I ended up starting work at the Palace Theatre at 15 years old, and started out as a stagehand, and then started being a lighting technician. And this was in the late 80s, and further down Whitworth Street was a certain club called the Hacienda. And around then, of course, you know, the late 80s, you know, Manchester was about to take off. And my head was turned, and after a couple of years of working in various theatres, so the Library Theatre and the Opera House around Manchester, I decided I wanted to venture out into the world of music, and went to work at a Manchester lighting rental company, and worked there for a couple of years. And I really sort of learnt the tools of the trade when it came to lighting, and then managed to tour with bands like the Inspiral Carpets and the Stereo MCs, did some Happy Monday shows, and we also supplied equipment to the Hacienda. So I was really in the thick of sort of the Manchester music explosion.
And what was that like at the time? Because I always find it intriguing looking back on really big cultural shifts that have happened, and big moments in the history of the industry. Do you feel at the time like it's something big's happening, or is it not until you look back on what's happened and you think, wow, that was actually such a big movement?
No, I think, as a teenager, it felt quite extraordinary. And, the opportunities that I had working with the bands that I had at the time, it really did feel like, Manchester was at the centre of the universe. Yeah. Because every magazine, there was no internet in the late 80s. So, every music magazine that you looked at, the Happy Mondays would be on the front cover, the Stone Roses would be, the Inspiral Carpets, it was Manchester bands headlining shows at GMEX. They were headlining festivals like Reading and Glastonbury. So you really did feel like you were in the middle of this huge music explosion. And to be able to work with some of those bands and be part of that, was quite extraordinary.
And I imagine you built some really important relationships at your time working there. I believe that's where you met Sam and Sasha.
I did. So yes, after working at a lighting rental company doing tours, I decided touring wasn't for me, and I wanted to be based more in Manchester. And I wrote a letter to Rob Gretton, who managed New Order, who became a really, really close friend of mine, asking him for a job at the Hacienda and giving him a reason why I should be working at the Hacienda. And he took me on, and I was production manager at the Hacienda, so I looked after most of the live aspects of the club. So any touring bands that came in, the promoters, sound and lighting equipment for the club, and also private hires. So whilst the club is rather infamous and for its success around acid house and being the explosion of house music, it certainly wasn't commercially successful. And one of the things I was trying to do was to drive some revenue, and whether that be promote additional nights or hire the club out. And one day Sasha came in to hire the club out, and he was a pretty underground student promoter at the time, and he came in, and I think we hired the club for him on a Monday night to do a night called Scandalous. So that was my first meeting with Sasha, and then purely coincidentally, Sam was a student, and he was working with a couple of pals, and he came in to hire the club as well. So they both hired the club before they went on to sort of bigger and better things.
Amazing. So, as they say, the rest is history from there. At what point did you, because you're working for the Hacienda at this point, at what point did you start to think, I want to branch out and do things on my own and really get that, I guess, entrepreneurial spirit?
Well, I was so committed to the club. Robbie Managed New Order was funding the club. We had a really close, community of people, and we were doing some really, great shows at the house at that point. We had people like Oasis and the Chemical Brothers coming through. We'd done the Britpop explosion, and most of those bands came through and performed at the club. And I really didn't see anything beyond the Hacienda. It was more the Hacienda coming to an end, which it did quite suddenly. In '97, we delivered the 15th birthday party, which was a great, typically, quite production heavy, extravagant Hacienda event in the May, and then 2 months later it had shut and wouldn't reopen. So I ended up staying on at the club afterwards, working with Rob. Because the plan was to try and get it trying to reopen the venue, but for various reasons that didn't work out. So I ended up staying on, helping out. We had to sell assets, so I was flogging the sound system, I was flogging lights, I was flogging anything I could to try and keep the bills paid while the building was sold in a orderly fashion. But while that was going on, I was trying to build my next step in my career, which was trying to use those skills that I'd learned at the Hacienda, which was a bit of everything really. So I was a production manager, so I knew quite a lot about lighting, very little bit about sound, but a lot about the whole live experience. So worked with various people at that point to be a freelance production manager, and we did things like the Commonwealth Games handover ceremony, and started to branch out into the world of outdoor events at that point. And did that for 2 or 3 years until around 2001.
So yeah, don't do things in halves then. straight into the Commonwealth. Did you feel like you had like a clear path you wanted to go down? Was there an end goal in mind, or were you just finding your feet with?
No, I mean certainly at that point I was I knew what I was good at, but I didn't know what the end goal was. And in 2000, we'd sold the club by then. Rob had quite suddenly died in '99 after we'd got through all the messy business of the club, which was a bit of a turning point really, because I'd worked really closely with Rob. He'd brought New Order from being Warsaw into Joy Division into New Order, and then suddenly Rob wasn't there. So I went travelling. So I did my gap year quite late. So I did my gap year when I was being 28. So went travelling for 6 months, came back with a desire to build something. So I came back, hooked up with an old friend of mine, Steve Smith. Steve had worked with Fat City Records, and delivered a number of club nights at the Hacienda, Flying the Fat club nights. He'd brought people like African Bambata over and done some really interesting shows there. And we started a project he'd already sort of kicked about, which was something called Ear to the Ground. And we started Ear to the Ground as this events, do everything for everybody events agency, and we work with brands, delivering club events. We delivered outdoor events. We did things like Doves and Badly Drawn Boy in Castlefield Arena. And Steve had already started doing repercussion. So repercussion, or depercussion should I say, was an outdoor music festival, free festival in Castlefield. He'd started that in '97. I'd helped him out a little bit with it, but when I got back from travelling, we pushed that forward onto a different level, so increased that into sort of about 30,000 capacity free festival.
When did festivals start coming into the mix? Because I imagine there was the boom of Clubland, and I know festivals have always been around, but there was definitely a point when it really went into.
Yeah, when I was really into that outdoor, that outdoor production, Steve introduced me to a friend of his called Gareth Cooper, who had started this festival called Snowbombing in the French Alps, and Gareth had done 1 year of snowbombing, and he'd had, it's fair to say, some logistical production issues. I got the phone call, and I went over and delivered the production for year 2 of Snowbombing. I think that must have been 2001, and I've done it for 20 years since. So Snowbombing was my first festival. We were running depercussion at the time as a free festival in Castlefield, and then over the next few years we started picking up other festivals, started doing the production on Field Day in London, and I started to get a little bit of a reputation as being a bit of a festival specialist, which led to me, led to the sort of beginning of the warehouse project in sort of 2005, I'm going to say 2006.
So going from clubs to international festivals, what are some of the challenges in transitioning into that?
I mean, moving from indoors to outdoors is a big challenge, and festivals, when you've got multi-day festivals and you're looking after that amount of people, not just for 5 or 6 hours in a club, but for days and the sleeping on site and partying on site, it is very different indeed. And of course, when you move outside, you've got a lot of external challenges, which you just can't control, and the weather being the biggest one of those.
So from snowbombing, how did you expand into more festivals then? Was it something that came from your team? Did you collab with other people? What was that process like?
Well, we started to get a reputation at Ear to the Ground for delivering a really quality service, and sort of it was around that period I tried to get the structure of what a perfect festival production team would look like, which helped, because I think it's the festival industry in the early noughties was still relatively in its infancy. If you think Glastonbury only started in the early 70s, festivals proper didn't start really till the 80s, and it's only been since the noughties that they've really developed to the scale that we see today. So we got a reputation for delivering a quality production service, and sort of that opened the doors. So we started by doing Field Day Festival with Marcus and Spyro in London, and some of the time we got the call was because people had a bad experience with the show where it hadn't gone right and hadn't met their expectations. So we ended up coming in and looking at how we could improve it, off the back of that, we met the guys from Kendal Calling, started delivering Kendal Calling, and as with a lot of things within our industry, a lot of it is about building relationships with people, and off the back of building those relationships, you end up generating opportunities. So for instance, with Andy and Ben from Kendal, they started Kendal at a very early age. We weren't involved at the beginning of their festival career, but we came into Kendal Calling at a quite a crucial juncture when it was growing. It was growing quite quickly, and we helped support that growth. But working with those guys, they were clearly very driven and had lots more ideas. And off the back of that, we collaborated together to start doing shows at Jodrell Bank. And we delivered five or 6 years of concert series called Live from Jodrell Bank, with a variety of artists. It was single stage concert format where we did everyone from the Flaming Lips to Elbow to the Halley Orchestra and New Order along the way. Because they worked well, that ended up morphing into Bluedot. And that's a festival that we are all very proud of. It's got quite unique positioning. Bluedot, was one of those collaborations, just out of that long-term relationship of working with someone.
It feels like a domino effect, doesn't it? Like all these people you're meeting on the journey are leading to all these different opportunities. Going back to one of those first dominoes, as you said before, which was Sasha and Sam, meeting them in the Hacienda, that then led to the Warehouse project. What was the inception of that like? How did it come about?
Well, I got a call one day off Sash, saying he just left Sankey's, which was quite seismic. I mean, Sasha going into Sankey's was quite seismic because it was him joining forces with Dave Vincent, and they were in my Hacienda time were arch enemies. David promoted the Ministry of Sound. He was David from Callas, as he was known, and Sasha did her thing, David did that, but they came together and they took on Sankey's, which was a well-loved Manchester venue, and did some great things down there. And as quickly as it started, it seemed to be over, with Sasha leaving, David still being there, but with Sam leaving with Sasha. And I got the phone call saying, we've got this idea. We're going to do an annual series of shows called the Warehouse Project, where we go into a warehouse each year and do a load of raves. Are you interested? I was like, I'm always interested in a challenge. So have you got anywhere in mind? And Sasha was like, yep, let's go and have a look at Boddington's Brewery. So so off we go to have a look at Boddington's Brewery, which had only recently closed. And we have a walk round this, this very old, in pretty poor condition, in half state of demolition and strip out, an iconic building with a view to turn it into a entertainment venue for 3 months. And I jumped at the chance. I didn't really think that 10 years after the Hacienda closing, I would end up being back delivering electronic music, doing raves again, essentially. And it was a great challenge, and it was unlike any other challenge I'd had at that point, which was taking on a building and trying to turn it into a safe, enjoyable venue.
Has anyone else done that at the time? The idea of these pop-up?
Well, Sasha and David had done an event previously in a warehouse, which had worked really well, but that was a one-off. So people had done one-offs, but trying to do a series in a limited period of time, I think it was completely unique. And the challenges that go with that are completely unique, because you're taking on an industrial venue that was never designed for public use. You're trying to keep your costs manageable because you've only been there for 3 months, so it's not like you can spend a huge amount of money. So you can't install permanent toilets. You can't spend the money you would do if you're normally building a venue. But clearly, you got to make it meet all the standards and licensing requirements that a normal venue has to.
Yeah, so it feels like a bit of a risk going into it.
It's a massive risk, absolutely. And we went into that Boddington's, with an awful lot of enthusiasm, and we were relatively confident in what we were doing, but I don't think we were, quite aware of some of the challenges we encountered along the way. The opening night we had a huge water pipe burst behind the main bar, so there's water spraying everywhere. Try taking on these buildings where you don't exactly know where all the services are, and you've not installed everything yourself, comes with a bit of the unknown, and certainly we found that unknown. And I think the most well-known issue was around noise, where we'd done everything you'd normally do with a noise management plan, predicted noise levels off-site, and everything was fine, except there were 2 issues. One was the fact that the prison, Strangeways, or HMP Manchester, was getting quite high noise levels, so the prisoners were enjoying the warehouse project. But the other one was the actual roof of the main dance space acted as a loudspeaker and managed to project the noise about 1 kilometre in a westerly direction to a tower block. And we got these complaints in from this tower block, and no one could believe it until I went over there, went up to the 14th floor of Riverbank Tower in Greengate, and it was almost like you're on the dance floor. So it was a battle. It had some great, we had some great shows in there. Calvin Harris did, I think, the first New Year's Eve there, and it was one of his first ever shows. Wow. We did some Manchester bands, so we did things like The Fall in there. We had these challenges along the way, but it certainly was the foundations for the warehouse project, which is clearly a Manchester institution, and is probably going to outnumber the years that the Hacienda operated for. Yeah,
it's crazy, and to have been around and been a big part of 2 of those huge moments must have been mad. Did you have a feeling before you went in? Like, do you get a gut feeling before you go into some of these projects that although it feels like a risk, you feel like it is going to redefine the space, or you're going to be doing something quite special?
You do, definitely after yes, operating for some time, after working for so long, you definitely get a feel. And I suppose another feel I got for doing a festival, or yeah, an event which sort of broke a little bit of ground, was when Gareth Cooper from Snowbombing called me up and said, "John, do you want to come and have a look at Portmeirion in North Wales with me?" And I knew Portmeirion from being a kid and going on holiday in North Wales, and we went over there, and Gareth was like, we need to do a festival here. It's completely bonkers. What do you think? And I told him what I thought. I thought it's completely bonkers. There's only a single track road in, which is the same road out.
But yeah, am I right in saying there was just one road in for all the
one
production,
road in,
everything?
Absolutely. Customers, production, emergency vehicles, only one road in. The whole of the site is built on a peninsula, so there's nothing flat. And on 2/3 of the site, you're surrounded by sea. But that didn't put us off. So we started Festival number 6 off the back of that, which I'm very proud of. The financial aspects of number 6 leave something to be desired. It was certainly never a commercially successful festival. Some years we had some upside. Certainly on other years we had considerable losses. But I think off the back of number 6, we were part of that change in what a music festival could be, because I think up until the beginning of things like Wilderness, possibly Bestival, Festival number 6, festivals were quite crude. They were, for music fans, they delivered, superb production. You could go to Reading Festival, you could go to Glastonbury, but your quality of experience as a customer in terms of toilets, showers, sleeping accommodation left something to be desired. And what we tried to do with Festival number 6 was try to reimagine what a music festival was, and it didn't need to be necessarily just about music. So we tried to introduce quite a lot of arts and culture, which you'd have seen at Glastonbury over the years, but do it in a much more boutique and curated environment. And we brought some pretty incredible performances together, whilst having some pretty challenging conditions. It was early September. We could only do the festival in early September, but we tried to do it in the downtime from the tourist season. So we early September. Little did we know, early September is also the tail end of the hurricane season in the Caribbean, and we experienced more years of wet weather and tail end of hurricanes coming over the Atlantic and hitting North Wales than I care to remember. And with that, we had a few issues.
Yeah, I imagine it was tricky time to navigate, although the backdrop of that festival was absolutely stunning. We were lucky enough to work with you guys on a few years for it, and there's nothing I think that can rival that site destination. But you're right, I feel like it started an expectation, I think, from festival goers that you don't just have to be shoved in a field, and the music, I think the experience has become such a big part of that in festivals since that point. So Escape to Fright Island is one of the biggest projects you've been involved in recently, and that has really innovated in the space of F&B and really turning this outdoor food hall market concept into something that's a lot more multi-art, multicultural, multi-entertainment. I really haven't seen anything done like it before, and the launch was incredible, and it's gone from strength to strength since it opened. So how did that come about? Where did the idea come from?
Well, Gareth Cooper, who pops up quite a few times.
There's a running theme here, isn't there?
There is. It's another project Gareth and me have worked very closely on. Mayfield Depot is a space that I've known and worked with for 8 or 9 years, and we've got a bit of a history with that space. Me and Gareth are also shareholders of a business called Broadwick, and Broadwick Venues took on the whole of Mayfield Depot, and our first piece of work there was to make it safe enough to take shows, and that led to the Warehouse project taking it on as its new home in 2019. But part of our vision for Mayfield Depot was that it should be more than just a music venue, and that we had this rather unusual indoor-outdoor space there, which we'd earmarked for F&B. And we'd taken it out to the market. We'd spoken to loads of different F&B operators, and no one would really take the challenge on. So me and Gareth were talking one day about it, and we basically came up with the idea that we should take it on. If no one else was going to take it on, we should take it on. And we started talking, collaborating with some other people who were a little bit more experienced in the F&B world than us. So Luke and Justin, the Unabombers, who have morphed from being underground club DJs into being restaurateurs of note. And Dan Morris, who done an incredible job of taking on the Albert Hall with Joel and turning that into a great music venue. So we started talking about what could we do with the space. And I think one of the things that we were talking about was one of the frustrations I have with music festivals is the fact you spend all year planning for a festival, and that is your cycle. It is a yearly cycle. You never stop on a music festival. And it's all about one weekend, and if your weather's poor that weekend, it's quite disappointing. But the other thing with a music festival is that you put in so much work into one weekend, and the amount of infrastructure, the amount of people who come together to build that site and then dismantle it again, isn't really pushing all the sustainability buttons. And one of our chats was, wouldn't it be great to have a permanent festival site? And that essentially is sort of part of the story around Escape to Freight Island. And we'd started planning this in 2019, so we'd come up with a design in 2019 with a view to start building it early 2020. And of course the pandemic hit in March, and during that first lockdown, me, Gareth, Luke and Justin were on Zooms talking about what we were going to do. We came up with the idea of recreating or redesigning our outdoor area of Freight Island, and making it COVID secure, as we know now, and getting that built in the middle of 2020. So that's what we did.
The timing almost worked out quite well, because with the nature of the first phase of it opening, with it being platform 15 to begin with, it was actually, we were working with you guys on the launch, and I guess a challenge of launching a new venue and a new brand and everything in the middle of a pandemic was just a nightmare. But I feel like the timing almost panned out quite well in the first phase. I know there was unfortunately you had to shut just before some of the indoor stuff opened, but it kind of felt like right place, right time.
Oh, I mean, it was a lifesaver, because I mean, the first half of 2020, from February onwards, I was in a cycle of postponing or cancelling festivals, which isn't as easy as just turning the light off. There's an awful lot that goes into that process, and I'd been doing that for a couple of months, not really knowing what we're going to do for the rest of the year. And then we're having these background conversations about Freight Island, and we decided to push the button. And in June, so when I'm normally building or delivering Parklife, I'm on site with a 26-ton digger, employing a lot of the people that I would normally be on site at Parklife with. But instead, we are building the outdoor area, platform 15, as we called it, for Freight Island, and it was an absolute godsend. Certainly for me and the Engine Number 4 team, it gave us a project to get our teeth into. We purposefully employed all our friends and contractors that had absolutely no work. So sound and lighting companies who weren't doing anything pivoted to be electrical contractors. Our festival plumbers did permanent plumbing, ground workers the same, staging companies and scaffolders. So we really brought all the experience and know-how from the festival world into building Freight Island, and we had quite a intense build schedule, 5 weeks. But that's what we're used to, and we're working next to a building site. People are saying you're never going to get that done in 5 weeks, but we turned it round, and it opened to great success.
And was that another one of those projects where it just felt like something different? As I said, we were sat in a room with Luke, and Luke was explaining the concept as eloquently as he always does, and I was like, this sounds insane. I can't picture this kind of final vision that you've got, because it sounds crazy. But as soon as it launched, everyone just got it, and it just kind of really hit a note with so many people. And I think there was such a big gap in the market for that type of space, really. As I said, I've not seen it done before. Did you go into that with a similar fire in your belly, like what you had with the Hacienda and the Warehouse project, where it's like, this, I really think this is going to stick? I
did, and going through the whole process and then building the inside element, it has been a great experience, because never before have I built anything that's sort of semi-permanent. The Wales project lasts for 3 months, but here we are building something which seems to have some significance, and it's been a wonderful journey. And as with a lot of the projects, or the more successful projects I've been involved in, it's the sum of the parts. So it's not just about one individual, it's about a number of people coming together and bringing everything that they know and their experience, bringing that to the table to create something that is pretty unique. And the great thing with Freight Island is we don't stand still, and because we built it the way that we built it, it means we can keep on changing it. And with the people involved, we're always constantly trying to look at how we can improve it. And the Freight Island story is not, certainly not finished. And only last week were we building a new mezzanine with this groundbreaking new product as a Manchester first. We're all really excited and proud about that. So we can extend Freight Island further, so we can do more interesting content.
I saw some news about that with the materials that we use for the flooring, which has won awards, didn't it?
It's graphene and concrete mixed together. So graphene's a super material that was invented at Manchester University. And what we've done is pour a slab of concrete where you normally have to reinforce it with rebar and fibres and cut it into slabs so it doesn't crack. But we poured this large 700 square metre slab of concrete with no reinforcement. It's reinforced with graphene. It's Manchester first, and it's on the Freight Island.
Amazing. So I know you're a big part of the Mayfield project as well. So what's the future for that space, for Freight Island?
Well, we're pushing forward. We've got the warehouse project's there for the next 3 months, but in January we've got the space which is known as Archive during the warehouse project. We're going to set to work on that to make that into a semi-permanent music venue. Also for events, but I'm also really excited about the opportunity to deliver more training and job opportunity down at Mayfield. Mayfield's one of the largest city centre regeneration projects outside London. I think it might be the largest outside of London. And we've got this window of opportunity. So before everything is redeveloped and built upon, we've got this incredible opportunity to use it. And as part of that, I want to try and get as much benefit as possible out of the space for the local community and for Manchester. I'm a very proud Mancunian, and I think it's one way I can try and give a little bit back for the city. So one of the things I really want to try and do down there is create training and job opportunities for young people to get into either the hospitality or the festival and music industries, because we're down there, we're on the edge of the city centre, You know, we've got some socially deprived areas near us like Ardwick and Gorton and what have you. And if we can try and get a platform down there where young people can come and get some experience and move into our industry, that'd be just wonderful.
I feel like it's really needed off the back of COVID and just how hard I've been hit with. Many people, I imagine, have probably left the industry full stop. So it's about getting
absolutely, Sean.
people
I think
into the system as well.
You know, over the challenging compressed festival period that we just delivered, you know, one of the biggest challenges is around the staffing issue. And yeah, you know, an awful lot of people left the live world to go and work in the broadcast world. So you know, the TV and film industry is absolutely booming in the UK at the moment. So we've lost a lot of talent to that world, which is completely understandable. But you know, festivals are booming too. So we need to get that conveyor belt of young people coming into the festival world.
And, you know, we won't touch too much on COVID because I'm sure we've all heard enough of it. But, you know, being on in the production side of events is tough. You know, you're facing so many high pressure situations where you've kind of got to keep a calm head. So what are have you got a kind of way that you approach situations, or have you got a mindset that you try and stick to when it comes to really, you know, I guess it's crisis management a lot of the time, isn't it, on site? How do you find you handle those situations?
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah, crises are part and parcel of being outdoors and dealing with customers and the weather. You know, it clearly gets easier the older you get and the more experience you get. And decision making, I think, is, you know, a critical part of what I do. So when I'm an event director, you know, on a large show such as Parklife or Kendal Calling or Bluedot, you know, you've got to make decisions, you know, and you've got to make them very quickly at times. And clearly you've got to try and make the right ones. So part of that process is by getting the right information around you at the right time, and trying to get as much data and information as possible. And clearly with technology that has got much easier, so you can try and make, you know, safety critical decisions, you know, as informed as possible. So I think that's crucial. And, you know, things that I mean, you know, it might be around weather. So in the past, you know, clearly electrical storms are a big challenge. So you don't want lightning near your festival site, or if you do have lightning near your festival site, you've got to do various things. So you might need to do show stops. So, you know, these days you've got things like lightning maps on which is a website which will detail, you know, as lightning strikes. So it's just having some information like that, and weather data is absolutely crucial to a lot of decision making on a festival. But it might be other data that, you know, how many people are arriving, flow rates arriving at your festival will dictate how your gates are operating. Capacities of stages will know how your site in terms of crowd movements on site, that will inform some decision makings around crowd management and the like. But one of the crucial things is, of course, is having the right team around you and having the right experienced people in the right roles, and leaning on those individuals. I mean, during the lifetime of a festival, what we'll do is have ELT meetings. So those happen every 6 hours through the lifetime of a show, where all the heads of department come together, and that's a little snapshot of how we're doing. Any problems anywhere, any problems foreseeable, you know, is the weather going to deteriorate, any off-site issues, any issues with trains, because they all impact on how you run a show. So for instance, the other year at Parklife, due to, you know, a fatality off-site at a Metrolink station, we lost the Metrolink. You know, the Metrolink takes away 18,000 people away from Parklife. You've got to make some decisions very quickly about what you're going to do, how you're going to communicate that out to your audience, how you're going to manage it as people leave the site. And of course, you need to do that in a multi-agency way, because it's not just you working in a silo on your festival site. You need to be talking to the police, Transport for Greater Manchester. You might be talking to your PR and social media team to broadcast that message. So it's making sure you've got those right people in the right place at the right time.
And it sounds like technology is one of the biggest changes, and I guess one of the biggest things that's helped you deliver what you need to. And, you know, thinking of everything back from where you started off in the 80s and in theatre, all the way up to everything you've done up until this point, what have been the biggest shifts and changes that you've seen? Everything from culture to technology to just, I guess how the scene has been.
Yeah, I mean, it's changed significantly, and for the better. You know, in the late 80s, early 90s, you know, safety was hardly as high on the agenda as it is now. So there's safety practices, procedures, and the whole approach to safety is now sort of front and centre, where it certainly wasn't back then. And you know, entertainment technology, you know, lighting and video. You know, you never had video in the 80s. We had these two archaic video screens in the Hacienda, and that was as much as video went. And when you look at, you know, the types of show that we're delivering at Parklife these days with LED screens, you know, it's mind-blowing how far entertainment technology has come along, and a lot of it's for the better. You know, the amount of power that we used to use on lighting rigs on the road in the 90s, where everything was tungsten, and you had these highly you know, you had thousands of hundreds of strobes that used to use an inordinate amount of power. Now with LED technology, it's a lot cleaner, it's a lot more sustainable, and the way you can control lighting and sound. So, you know, that technology aspect is, and it continues to develop and change. Then aside from that, you know, the actual experience for the customers changed considerably. Like we were saying before about the on-site experience, you know, at festival 15, 20 years ago, it was chemical toilets, and that was about it. You know, the toilet experience has moved on considerably. The boutique camping experience, food. I mean, 15 years ago, it was burgers, and now you know, the food that you can expect on a festival site, you know, is as good as you can expect on the high street.
And how do you see, because I imagine you can kind of sense when these changes are happening, do you think things are going to change even more in the next 5 or 10 years? Where do you see it heading? Yeah,
I mean, entertainment technology is, you know, is constantly evolving and changing, you know, and a lot of that is driven by talent as well, because, you know, talent want to deliver shows which are, you know, better, different, bigger than ever before. I think clearly trying to make our industry more sustainable is at the front and centre of everybody's mind, you know, certainly at the moment. You know, some people have been doing a great job over a number of years within our industry, but as a whole, we really need to focus and come together and look at how we can make some step changes, and start meeting some you know, realistic targets to try and get our carbon use down. So I think that is going to drive innovation as well. So this year, for a start, we started using a new cabin supplier where we can get 20 porta cabins delivered on 2 trucks because they come flat pack. And, you know, it's innovation like that which is going to drive forward over the next few years in my view.
And you can see it from, I guess, ravers and festival goers are getting younger and younger, of course, and the kind of younger they are, they're so much more conscious about environmental issues and sustainability. And like, I can feel it from the marketing side as well. People are asking big questions, you know, when events are happening, the customers are looking into these things. So it's kind of been driven very much from the ticket buyers as well. But I can see that. Yeah, I guess when you really think of the scale of how many festivals happen as well, it's something that does need to change. I feel like a theme throughout your whole journey has really been right place, right time, domino effect. Gareth Cooper usually popping up with something at some point. Have you had any places where you've maybe been wrong place, wrong time, took the wrong turn, done a project that didn't go as planned?
Oh, I've had my fair share of crises that haven't gone particularly well. Festival number 6 was always a challenge, but there's one infamous year where I took a very wrong call about a car park, and we used a car park adjacent to a river with a weather forecast which wasn't great, but I didn't realise it was going to be as bad as it was, and we'd had probably one of the toughest days on the festival site I've ever had. It was the tail end of one of these hurricanes coming over, so we had high winds and relatively heavy rain. Heavy rain you can normally deal with on a festival. Wind is not your friend on a festival, because most temporary demountable structures, so stages, marquees, etc., are only suitable for certain wind speeds. So I spent the whole of this Saturday with my team constantly closing stages, dealing with damaged structures, just trying to keep the festival in alive, as it were, trying to keep it going, which we did, and we managed to get the headline act away on the main stage, and by 3 o'clock in the morning I thought we'd got through it, and I was enjoying a glass of red wine in the production office when I got the phone call to say I better come down to have a look at the Park and Ride car park. And Park and Ride car park was about a mile away from the site. All the customers parked there. It was adjacent to a river, and when I arrived, I stopped on the dual carriageway, looked over the car park, and on one of the car park fields, which had about 600 cars in it, all I could see was water and car roofs, which was quite a sobering, quite shocking view, to be honest. So that led to a very, very difficult 7 days because we couldn't get the cars out that easily, and there was a lot of customers displaced. There was a lot of upset customers, and it was quite a large crisis.
And how'd you get through it? How are you keeping yourself motivated?
With a team around you, and just trying to be as I don't know, as you've got to treat it as another challenge, and just some dogged determination to get through this thing. That was 4 o'clock in the morning. I knew there was nothing I could do that night, so I took the call to basically go to bed and get as much sleep as I can. I think that's really important. In our industry, you can end up getting fatigued. When you get fatigued, you end up making sometimes the wrong decision. So I was determined to try and get some sleep, and then assemble the team to make a plan the following morning. And I decided that what we needed to do was I needed to leave my second in command to run the festival, and I needed to move down to the car park and assemble a management team of how we're going to try and deal with what was a huge mess.
Because you've got the customers to think about, of course, but then you've also got to put a brave face on for the team and kind of lead from the front in that way as well.
Absolutely. And they're looking to you to make the decisions. And sometimes you do come across these challenges which you can't look at back on experience, because it's a completely new experience. And with that car park, it was I ended up having to do things I never thought would end up having to do on a festival, which was ask the local authority to open a leisure centre for a respite area for customers, because they couldn't get their cars, so they couldn't leave site. So we opened the local leisure centre, and I remember halfway we had the most of North Wales's farming community coming down with tractors to try and earn as much money by pulling people out. So just trying to manage that was a huge challenge. I do remember a customer saying, "When are you going to bring the army in?" And I did think, if I knew how to call the army in, I probably would call the army in. But as it happened, we got through it. You know, a huge team effort, and we got through that. And you know, unfortunately, I've had other weather-related, you know, festival incidents where there's nothing you can do about the weather, you know. So if the weather turns and you don't have the right infrastructure, or your site's not in the right place at the right time, then you know the weather can win. And unfortunately, I think moving forward, with the way that the climate change is clearly affecting us, then you know that's going to be one of the challenges moving forward for festival organisers and festival producers like myself. Is how can we make our festival sites more robust and deal with those extremes of weather. I mean, the other crisis is sort of brought on by the customers, and you know, by their behaviour, and you know, unfortunately over the years I've had to deal with the effects of substance use, and you know, which doesn't work out well in some cases, and I had to pick up the pieces when we've had drug fatalities, which you know are very, very difficult incidents to deal with, because I'm there trying to deliver a festival for young people to have a great time, and to go away with happy memories, and instead they're going to hospital and ending up dead, which is certainly what, you know, none of us are in the game for. And you know, that incident is never easy, and certainly off the back of that type of incident, that's led to my working with Professor Measham, who started the Loop, and I'm now very proud to be a director of the Loop, because I think it's clear that, you know, there's nothing that I can do to stop, or anyone can do to stop young people taking drugs. And whilst we try and do our damnedest to stop people taking drugs into a festival site, you know, you can't be naive to think that we can prevent that happening. So what can we do to stop people ending up dying or becoming seriously ill in hospital? And that's, you know, educating. And you know, the work that the Loop do in terms of harm reduction education is simply brilliant. And the best way you can educate people is by understanding what drugs are in circulation on a festival site, the testing that we have on site at festivals. You know, it goes back to my point about having, you know, intelligence, or having data, or having as much information as possible, and that's just another tool in the box about having information about what drugs are in circulation, because that can help you treat people. So you can, you know, it can help our medical team or our welfare team treat people if they're presenting with certain symptoms, but quite crucially, it means that we can do early warning messages out to the customers about a drug that might be in circulation. And you know, the thing with the festival world is, as well, is we are, you know, there is quite a wide festival family, and you know, we're very good at sharing information. So you know, if we get intelligence about a drug on one site, you know, we will share that with other festivals as well, and vice versa, because as much as we can do to you know, educate young people, you know, the better. And off the back of that, you know, I found it quite frustrating. Quite a lot of young people coming to festivals, first-time festival goers, coming really ill-equipped, and then ending up in welfare, needing equipment, where you just think, well, why didn't you bring a torch? Why have you come in flip-flops to a festival? So I started this website called festivalsafe.com, which gives top tips for festival goers, and it's not just first timers, because you find, I think one of the reasons why the festival industry has grown the way it has in the UK is because of the way people have grown up with festivals. And you know, people now, festivals used to be just something you used to go to when you were a teenager or in your 20s. But because festivals now developed, now you take your kids to festivals. Now there's family festivals where kids go. So so Festival Safe, it's got top tips there for, if you're taking kids for the first time to a festival, of things you should remember, like ear defenders and stuff. So
amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, incredible. So some big learning curves along the way, and a lot of challenges, I guess, you've learned from moving forward. Taking into account everything you've achieved so far, and I'm sure you'll go on to achieve even more. What have been your secrets to success? How have you done it?
Surrounding myself by really good people. I've been very, very fortunate in working with some really great people, and continue to do so on a daily basis. And I never stop learning. It's incredible. Every festival will bring up a new challenge or a new experience that I haven't experienced before. I think I'm constantly everyone's trying to strive to improve, and I am too, and we're constantly trying to improve the safety aspects of a festival and the experience at a festival. So that's something that which keeps on going.
Okay, nice. And then to wrap it up, I want to ask what's your end goal, because I think you've ticked off a lot of things. Is there anything left on your list to tick off? Where do you want to get to? Well,
I'm really enjoying the building things, which might last a bit longer than a festival. I'm certainly very keen to get back in the fields next year, 2022, and try and deliver a full festival season for the first time in a couple of years. Bluedot in particular, Jodrell Bank's just an incredible site, and Bluedot's a great festival, so really looking forward to getting that show away again. And trying to bring forward some of my ideas about trying to educate and train young people and get new blood into our industry, because it's a great industry to work in. You can make friends for life in it, and I think the opportunity I had right at the beginning of my career was because the Palace Theatre would give me a chance by doing some work experience, and if I hadn't had that, I don't know what would have happened really. So there's lots of work experience opportunity in the industry, and it's something I say to lots of people, is you just need to knock on the door and keep on knocking. If you want to work on festivals, there's people are crying out for people to work on festivals. You might have to start right at the bottom up, doing some volunteer roles, but by getting your foot in the door, you start to meet people, and it's off meeting people you'll get those bigger breaks.
Yeah, I was the same. Started on the dance floor, networking with records, selling tickets, flyering. Got the opportunity to work with Ed, Rob and Ollie kind of in the Warehouse Project office, and then Mustard Media started. So it literally is networking, isn't it? And as you say, it's the domino effect of one person, it leads to another opportunity, and you've been able to achieve everything that you have done really from connecting with people. Listen, Jon, thank you so much for coming in. It's been incredible to listen to you. I could listen to you all day, and yeah, I just love everything you've achieved, and I'm sure you'll go on to even bigger and better things. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Sean.
Nice one.